I am Ghatage SS, working as assistant professor in SGM College, Karad. I am teaching to MSc first year, Relational Database Management System. One of the points from syllabus we are going to discuss, that is SQL. Brief history regarding SQL and concepts from SQL. Now SQL stands for structured query language. You already know, that is, it is a structured query language. It is part of every RDBMS, Relational Database Management System. IBM developed the original version of SQL called SQL as a part of System R in 1970. Now this product further evolved and many products support now the SQL language. Nowadays commercial SQL language is available. SQL established itself as a standard relational database language. If you observe any relational database management systems, maybe you may consider MySQL, MSc-I or Oracle, there is SQL. In 1986, ANSI and ISO, Indian International Standard Organization, published an SQL standards which is called SQL 86, and this is a standard for structured query language. ANSI, American National Standard Institute, published an extended standard for SQL, SQL 89 in 1989. That means SQL step by step in earlier days evolved and we provided steady, nothing but reliable, efficient SQL as a commercial product. Now next version of SQL was developed or coming to market as SQL 92 or SQL 1990, and the most recent is known as SQL 2000. In such a way, we come across brief history regarding structured query language which is available as a language of our relational database management system, which provided to create relational database, manipulate data of this relational database, as well as query the relational data from the database. Now if you come across this one, then if you consider SQL language, the language commands are categorized into different groups. There are number of groups provided to us. Now SQL language commands are grouped into or categorized into different such categories or groups. First category of those commands is known as DDL and stands for Data Definition Language. It provides commands for defining, delete or modify the relation schema, that is nothing but structure of our database. Now DDL is basically provided to us to create the database structure, modify the database structure, as well as if not required in future, delete that particular database structure. In such a way, certain commands comes under this particular category is known as DDL, Data Definition Language. Then you will come across most important group of the commands, that is the category of the commands of SQL is nothing but DML, or this is called Interactive DML. DML stands for Data Manipulation Language Commands, and DML is a query language command based on both RA and RC. That means it is based on relational attribute and relational constraints. It includes commands to insert tuples, delete tuples, and modify tuples of the database. That means if we consider relational database, then relation is a table of that database, or it is also known as a table of this particular database entity, or further you may consider tuples is nothing but synonymous for this particular table or relation. And if you consider that table, that is a relation, further it can be Interactive DML is a query language based on both RA and RC. It includes command for the insertion of tuples, deletion of tuples, modification of tuples of a database is nothing but relation. Further, relation is known as a table and tuple is known as a row of that particular table. In a such a way, data manipulation language provides us so many query commands to achieve these particular tasks. Now come across further another command provided to us under the category known as integrity commands. That means DML includes certain commands for specifying integrity constraints such as not null constraint, such as unique constraint, such as check constraints, as well as primary key as well as foreign key constraints. As such, integrity commands are there come under the category known as DML, and these commands are provided to apply the constraints over the database relations or tuples. These updates the violate integrity constraints are not allowed. Means what? Whenever user trying to insert or update or modify certain database, there may be kept certain restrictions, and without that particular restriction framework activities user not allowed to carry out. That is, out of that restricted framework, any activities user are going to carry out, then those are not allowed due to this particular integrity constraints or integrity commands provided to us under the category known as DML. The next one is that view command or view definition. After that particular DML command, further there is another set of the commands known as a transaction control command, as well as that you may consider data control DCL command, that is data control command. But that commands also provided to us with higher capabilities of that particular database to manipulate. We will consider later on. Then we come across the what is the view definition. SQL DTL includes commands for creating the views. That means along with the tables with the DTL commands, you can also able to create the views. That is nothing but virtual tables in our database, and that is nothing but commands provided to us, like that is view commands under the category known as that is DTL. That we can create the view, we can update the view, we can modify the view, we can delete the view, and so on. Next. Now coming across that another transaction control command, as I said 1 minute before, that is nothing but these commands includes for specifying the beginning and end of the transaction. That is what is a transaction. Transaction is nothing but transactions are nothing but sequence of activities, and there is a begin as well as end for that bunch of activities. And if you want to carry out such a bunch of activities under certain title, and that is known as transactions, and these transactions may be required to control, such as to avoid that data damage or data loss or problem with the database. Then another set of the command is known as SQL embedded commands or embedded SQL commands or dynamic SQL commands. These are nothing but SQL statements can be embedded within a programming languages. Now if you observe the C language, CPP language, or other languages like that Java and earlier languages such as COBOL, Pascal, and so on, these languages are also allowed to us access the data from the database. But due to this, backend database is available from that database. In these languages, we have to extract the data from the database and manipulate. For this, we require certain commands under the title named as embedded SQL or that dynamic SQL. And these are so important when you are going to develop real life applications where user interfaces are developed using this particular listed languages, or business logic is developed using this particular languages, and backend is used as a database, and bridge between these one is taken applied, and then data is collected from database and presented for user in form of users understandable form, and this is done by use of this particular embedded SQL or dynamic SQL. The next one is that authorization. This is important. That is, database access is restricted. Database access is restricted, and to restrict that access to unauthorized user, some restriction provision mechanisms must be required, and there are certain authorization commands are provided in our SQL language under the category known as DLL commands or DLL commands for this particular purpose, such as providing access to the respective entities or part of the database, or restrict to the users to access that certain part of the database. In such a way, authentication or authorization is achieved by using these particular commands. Such commands are like that will grant command or that particular revoke command. These commands are provided to assign the rights to the user to access certain part of the database, as well as revoke command to revoke that particular permissions already assigned to the user to access the certain database entities. In such a way, we come across that bit history regarding that particular SQL language, how it is developed, how it is evolved, and then how it is used for particular purposes in this particular session. Later on, we will come across in detailed discussion of SQL certain category commands, and we will stop at this moment. Thank you.